to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me COVID Man 2020.
Trying to make it last for the entire year. Really squeezing it for all it's worth.
So don't be alarmed, or be alarmed. I actually don't know if I can fully tell you not to be alarmed, but a couple days ago, Jessica woke up with a lot of cold/flu-like symptoms. I was like, oh my gosh, whatever. We kind of socially distanced from each other, which felt very strange. I slept in the guest room, just really taking a lot of precautions. And I woke up the very next day, shortness of breath, a headache. I was like, oh my gosh. So booked appointments today. Jessica and I went in. I got the swab. I've been swabbed, which is actually, it is unpleasant, but it's not exactly nightmarish like some people on the internet have made it seem. Where they stick.
I have a terminally bad gag reflex, and so I have a feeling that would really do me in.
You know what? It doesn't trigger anything in the throat, but it does.
Okay.
It does kind of. Well, maybe it does, but it feels more like a burning almost as they stick it all the way, like further into your nose than you've ever had anything. But
wonderful.
Yeah. So it was unpleasant, but I was tested, and now it's a waiting game. In 2 to 4 days, we're going to find out if I've got it. And of course, I spent all night reading about how 55% of COVID patients experience some level of brain damage. And I just went down the hole. I've been spiraling. So I need a Playwright episode to pick me back up, lift my spirits.
I think we can claim brain damage as a pre-existing condition in this case.
You son of a... You know, I actually thought about that. I don't know, as you get into your 30s and stuff, and you begin to just very infrequently, but here and there, a little brain fart, and you start to wonder, oh, is that aging? Is that what's doing that? Did the number of those just increase slowly? Why I think about these things, I couldn't tell you.
I probably could have told you at some point, but I have clean forgotten.
And you know what? We can say this now to people, and when you say it out loud, it kind of sounds incredible. But somebody said we were doing training at work, and they said, "Tell us a fun fact about yourself." And I said, for the last 3 years, I've had to come up with an idea for a video game every single week.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And that froze the room, and that's true of you too. That could be a fun fact about you.
Yeah, that is a good one. A good one to, as kind of maybe not an icebreaker on a date per se, but no. I guess neither of us are really in that situation.
I was going to say that might actually be a date that you want to be on. I don't know about you.
Perhaps. Yeah, I think it would take a very special type of person for that to be the conversation starter, and to just think like, okay, what is the rest of the evening going to look like?
Yeah, exactly. Fair enough.
Anyways, let's get to some video game ideas. Let's continue that streak and come away with an even more impressive fact about yourself next year. I'll be going first this week. And what I want to ask is, what would a game like Supermarket Sweep look like as a 3D physics action game? So you're kind of shopping in a mall under a timer, and maybe you have to hit specific dollar amounts. Maybe you're trying to get the largest amount of money of items in your cart, but everything is a physics object, and so everything has to be actually piled in your cart. And so you're thinking about, small items that are worth a lot of money, maybe you just kind of have to pile it as high as you can and try to carefully kind of navigate it around the mall. But, don't let anything fall out of your cart. Otherwise, that will kind of count against your grand total. So let's go shopping, and we're going to start the clock.
This reminds me of, I think there was like a Nickelodeon game show that ended in this, wasn't there?
Possibly. I mean, there is Supermarket Sweep, which is, I think, on Netflix now. Kind of a similar type of idea.
Oh, that does this thing. Okay. Because I remember being so, like, talk about every kid's dream. I think the show literally ended with, okay, everybody's going to Toys R Us and you got to fill up with the most exciting, expensive things you can. You get to keep it. And I remember, like, some people just going to the video game aisle and getting 100 copies of Zelda because it was reasonably small and reasonably expensive. And
they're kind of counting on people heading for the super soakers and the doll houses and stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
Not things that stack cleanly and are worth $60 a pop.
That's right. That density. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually they started roping off the video game section.
Yeah.
But let's do this. How do we feel the interaction space could be here? Do we want to do a little bit more of a physicsy simulator? Maybe a Death Stranding type situation where you have to balance your cartwheels or something.
I think physics is a good avenue to take this down. I think the aspect of Death Stranding that kind of isn't as involved as the rest of the simulation is actually loading your body with the boxes that you're carrying. I mean, obviously you do get a lot of choices, a lot more choices than you reasonably need, especially since the kind of recommendation engine that'll kind of auto-equip you in what seems to be a pretty sensible loadout does a pretty good job of balancing weight to my experience. But I was thinking like something like that, the new Assassin's Creed Valhalla, they showed off in some of the demo videos. They had those kind of like rock stacking mini games where you actually have to kind of like, float the rock above the stack and
really
rotate it and move it so that it kind of stacks cleanly on top of the other rocks and place it carefully. So something like that could be done kind of quickly, but at the same time, like still has the potential to lose big, but isn't too time consuming.
What about, I love the idea maybe of somehow losing money by wrecking the store, right? Maybe you're all about loading things up in the cart, but bumping into a display or knocking over, a bunch of like freestanding dolls or something, or bikes. I like the idea of like this break it, you bought it angle.
That's a good idea as well, of especially as you're kind of like trying to navigate your cart through the aisles. I would like also if the things in your cart can break. So you kind of have to be careful with what gets put where. So if you have an expensive, record player or something like that, and that's on the bottom, and then you put a bunch of, a lawnmower on top of it, then it might, crush it under its weight or something like that. Or a, mini fridge or something expensive.
That's cool. Yeah. And so now you have this mechanic of like, potentially you need to maybe taking things out of your cart and placing them on the ground is much slower than trying to find an empty rack or an empty shelf rather, and be able to quickly unload at something that's more like arm height. So you can quickly in and out and then swap things around. And I would also kind of I know we talked about the physics angle, but I would love if this had a feeling of sort of Resident Evil style inventory rotation.
There's a game I want to reference in here, and it's one that isn't currently playable on any current platforms, which is really a tragedy. Like, it's not like a brilliant game, but it's definitely fun enough and interesting enough to be worth a look. It's a PlayStation 3 game called Trash Panic, which is kind of a Tetris-like, kind of a falling blocks type of game, but instead of blocks, you are filling like a giant trash can with different pieces of garbage, and they can be all sorts of things. Like it plays with scale, so sometimes you could be like an office garbage can, very small. Sometimes you can basically be the size of an entire dump, and trying to fill this garbage can with like washing machines and motorcycles and teddy bears and stuff like that, and postage boxes. And it was interesting because you're trying to fit as much as you can into this garbage can, and there are ways that you can kind of like intentionally break the garbage to make it kind of like fill in the little gaps. But if you find things like a mattress or a tire, like you really got to be careful with where they land, because they could be taking up a lot of space and leaving a lot of empty space and air in space that could be better used for something that's more kind of dense. And then if you drop heavy things on top of other items, you can use that to kind of break them up. But it's just a very clever little puzzle game that unfortunately they've not modernized for future systems, but really worth a look if you ever get a chance.
I like the idea too of maybe some sort of, when we're talking about maybe breaking things in the store, why not have an inventory tidiness? So if you have a mechanic where you can put things back on shelves, if you put them kind of in the wrong place, maybe it doesn't fully free up your inventory space for a while, or maybe it like puts a little percentage minus or something on your final score. So if you keep putting things back and you're kind of incentivized to load up your cart very quickly, just start putting things on there. And then as you find more expensive things in the store, and maybe it's all randomly generated, you have to kind of return and remember where you get the last thing in order to get the sort of full credit for that space.
This would be great as, of course, kind of a multiplayer competitive type of thing. It would be great if you could even kind of like ram and attack your opponent's cart to try to get their big pile of goods destabilized. I mean, there could really even be different types of shops that you would be entering, whether it's food at the grocery store, or expensive electronics from a Radio Shack, or something more modern. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities for kind of like reskinning this in interesting ways that would kind of play into the physics as well.
I like the idea. What if we did something where, like, if you set it in a toy store, you could actually use things like Nerf weapons and stuff to disrupt your opponents, and same thing with a grocery store, get into a little food fight, But as you waste food, you are also getting that minus from your score, but maybe that's worth it to throw somebody else off.
You use banana peels, of course, in a grocery store.
Finally.
Classic Mario Kart style. I mean, that's another interesting, it's kind of like setting traps in like a Monster Hunter or Horizon Zero Dawn or something like that, where you can spend some time. Maybe there's a crafting system even.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, that would get kind of... that would be interesting to, spend some time instead of piling things into your cart, because, maybe there's more time than you could ever possibly use, and you're going to fill up your cart anyways. You might as well use some of that time making some kind of long-term preparations to benefit you in your path to victory.
What do you think about doing something where in like the starting lineup, like maybe it's almost like a race or whatever, where everybody gets a cart, but the first thing you do is everybody has to run to the carts and get one off of the like sort of cart wagon. And you might end up with a cart with a terrible wheel or something. And the only way to like swap a cart is to find one that's already in the store that you can like just take a couple items out of, and you got to like switch everything over, but it's worth it because you can find faster carts and therefore get like a speed bonus.
I mean, even if you have to go back to this kind of dispensary where the carts came from originally, that's, it's enough of a slowing yourself down at the beginning of the race by, doing a couple laps around a small area to see if there's anything wrong with the balance of your cart.
Yeah.
And then going back and returning it kind of puts you, a little bit behind, versus if you were to just kind of, go with the bad cart at the beginning and get that head start, but have to be kind of burdened with something you have to compensate for the entire time.
I like the idea too of either when you have to go get a new cart to transfer everything yourself, or just quickly tip an associate and the stuff like instantly transfers over. And maybe same thing, like towards the end, you actually have to get to checkout, and you can go through the cashier checkout, which is steady, reliable, and pretty quick. Or you can do the self-checkout if you think that you can manually swipe everything, not drop anything, and get out with the highest number with that.
All right, we're out of time. Let's give it a name. I was thinking of, to pull in the shopping and racing elements of this, shopping and handling.
That's pretty good. I think that's it.
All right. What are you going to bring us today?
So I love spaceship games. I love Diablo. So I'm kind of pitching Diablo, but spaceships. What I'm imagining is not just everybody gets a ship that they're customizing, but rather there are different classes of ships, and you team up and party up with other members of small little squadrons or fleets. And I really want to lean into the more naval style combat of Starfleet ships, which is you have directional shields, front, left, right, bottom, top, that sort of stuff. Your weapons can fire in all of those directions, and you're really trying to maneuver and flank enemies. So there would be multiple ships, multiple classes, and you're running, potentially there's a campaign with several missions, and let's copy Diablo in terms of structure. Just there's a campaign, you can revisit it and rerun it, and there's all sorts of ways to set up challenges and leveling up, and we can play with it from there.
All right, starting the clock. Obviously, the thing about Diablo that stands out the most is its kind of looting-based elements of always kind of equipping better gear. How does that work on a spaceship? There are, there's only so much that you can do to a spaceship before it kind of morphs and becomes something different, right?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking Diablo also is good about if you're playing as a witch doctor, they several months after launch figured out that maybe we should drop witch doctor gear when you're playing as the witch doctor. So Diablo is kind of in a good space where it drops gear specifically for the thing that you're playing. And I'm thinking that starships, in this analogy, they have everything from almost completely non-cosmetic upgrades, whether that's phaser bank efficiency or you have more torpedoes you can hold now or something like that, all the way to, structural changes of this is a new type of engine for the ship and it allows a different type of speed or a different type of maneuverability with it. So I think you could either do it as you're physically building up and down the ship, in which case you get that you're always playing the line between maneuverability and durability, if you will, or power. But I was also thinking, think about all the levels of sort of systems you could build on this, right? So if you had parts were essentially gear for the ship, if you did a Diablo or Resident Evil style inventory system, that would be kind of fun to be able to hold spare parts and swap them out and that sort of thing. You could do a tech tree for sure. But then I was thinking about what if you could also, in some ship simulator style, do crew assignments to give yourself certain bonuses and run missions where you rescue ships that have distress calls out, and you could recruit star members of those crew to give yourself additional bonuses, that sort of stuff.
It'd be interesting if there are ways to kind of account for compatibility between different types of parts. If there are kind of human parts, alien parts, parts from different solar systems, or, whatever it is that you're kind of encountering, and they all kind of draw from different power supplies. And so maybe you can kind of specialize yourself for adaptability on the fly by kind of using a lot of your starting ship resources, putting that towards different types of batteries so that you can really kind of plug and play basically anything that you find on the battlefield. Or, maybe you specialize in one type of battery to get the most bang for your buck for the human parts, and just kind of always hope that you run across something. If your parts break, then, maybe you're kind of flying on empty for a little bit, but when you do get something, it really packs a punch.
I like the idea of, that's interesting. If you played into the idea of an engine core type or a core power type in a ship, and maybe ships can have either one full on or maybe a small hybrid of two running at any point. Now, the efficiency in which parts that, first of all, now you can only equip parts that are compatible with the power system that you have running throughout the ship. For my fellow listeners, I welcome you into the world of micro USB and USB-C. Think more of that, hey, we just don't have the connector to do this. But the sort of tilt of, if you go, now you're almost classing the ship as opposed to using the body or the type of ship as a class. Now the power implementation on the ship is sort of the ship core class, and different sorts of drops, different equipment will gain bonuses from being attached to certain types of power types, or maybe they're only compatible with certain types of power types. And now you're into the land of using the gear and these sort of engine cores to class up your vessel.
But I'd like if this was really kind of plug and play, and you could kind of respec on the go just by changing out the, any part really could be detached and replaced.
Yeah, I like the idea too of, maybe the screen of, in some games you can kind of just change your skills on the fly. I like the idea of having to issue orders to your crew and they start giving you time quotes as to how long a change will take and how significant the change is. But say you're in the middle of combat, if you can make gear swaps to keep your enemy on their toes, because usually these games also lock you out of changing skills when you're in combat. Well, what if they let you, but your crew told you, all right, you're going to have to survive for like 2 whole minutes during this fight while we change this stuff over. And during that time, you're not going to be able to use any weapons. You're only going to have access to shields or something.
Yeah, interesting. So what are ways that we could co-op this as well? That's another part of Diablo that stands out. There are ways that we can kind of fly together and use our individual ships' abilities without just kind of copy and pasting what co-op RPGs do.
Fly together, die together. Bad boys for life. That's a good question.
Perhaps to like adequately co-op, you have to kind of join your ships together to make kind of a one larger ship rather than flying separately.
Oh, like a Megazord sort of model. I like that. Yeah. One of the things I was thinking is some of what you see in terms of tactics on, say, Star Trek. This doesn't necessarily always happen during battle, but Star Trek has a mechanic. I think Star Trek Online even has a mechanic of if you can get a ship to the point where its shields are down, you can beam crew over to that ship to sort of take it over and win the fight that way. So you could have on-the-ground combat of those things, but what I was also thinking is during combat, you have the potential to lose crew as well. So if you're flying with other people, potentially you can beam crew members to their ships so that their skill changeovers will go faster, or they can additionally boost some system that maybe, you're overstaffed on or something because you're just the tank with all these shields and you're kind of on autopilot. And then likewise, if you're dealing with, like, you have a big bulky ship, I like the idea of having a couple small ships as teammates, and they can engage their tractor beam and kind of yank you in a direction. So you actually can do some, sort of e-brake like turns in space with the help of a couple of assistants.
That'd be kind of fun. So I guess, are there any kind of story elements that we can introduce here as well?
One of the things I do, I know there was some game pitched, I think it was even during the Xbox or PlayStation showcase last month, was some game where it might be Everspace 3 or something. They're doing a genre change. They're making it an open world loot-based RPG, which is maybe a little bit adjacent to this. But what I really love about Diablo, and I think so many other games don't quite get it, Destiny's okay at it, is having really distinct locales and having them have not only interesting aesthetics, but really recognizable landmarks. So, so many space games these days, whether they're generated or what, it's so hard to have the feeling of, this is the Horsehead Nebula, this has these characteristics, maybe there's pockets of gas that are dangerous, maybe there's space anomalies you're dealing with, but each of the acts or chapters in this feeling really distinct from each other and really like use all those crazy neon gases in space and crazy planets and stuff and asteroid fields as backdrops. That would be so cool.
Would there, let's see. I think the boss battles would be really exciting as well, especially if we can kind of like, balance out the large kind of expected, the large ship, Star Destroyer type of battles with like, space dragons and more kind of mythical fantasy types of creatures instead. Yeah,
that's really cool. And then, hey, why don't we, for good measure, have, in the same way you can run like a rift or a short dungeon in Diablo kind of ad nauseum, you could do something where you can do challenges that are like Star Fox on rails, shooter levels, and use those for quick gear grinding or leveling something up.
That's enough time there. Let's give it a name.
Space, the final frontier. What are we doing here for names? I feel like so many of the terms are generic. Squad, fleet. Maybe fleet is open. So in Star Trek, they have quadrants of the galaxy listed as the Alpha Quadrant, the Gamma Quadrant, stuff like that. I wonder if there's quadrant or some cool Greek letter the Zappa quadrant. Or the Omega. Maybe Omega gets involved somewhere. The Omega quadrant.
Treasure Planet is a good name, but that's already taken by a Disney film.
Oh, I like the idea though of leaning into the like loot aspect and angle of it. Treasure Planet. Is there like I'll probably regret this because I feel like I pitched a more serious game than this, but Space Booty ain't bad.
Space Booty, that's fun. It's better than Loot Skywalker, which is the best I can come up with. All right, Space Booty, I think will join the pantheon of playwright pitches very well. Let's hop on over to our community and see what they've submitted for us this week. This comes from Matt Parker, who says, imagine The Sims cross the Thing, cross Children of the Corn. You start off as a vulnerable parasite alien.
Ooh.
You're plunked onto an existing household that runs along like a normal Sims house. Your task is to take over the entire house. Once you take hold of a person, you need to keep them behaving normally so they don't raise suspicion. Keep going to school, work, shower yourself, etc., etc. However, you need to be on the lookout for the perfect time to infect another host. Each new person you infect, you need to keep up the impression that they're normal and need to be looking for more hosts. Eventually, you'll take the whole house over, the whole town, city, country, and then the world. Awesome. Starting the clock. This is interesting because it kind of, almost in the way that COVID's spreading, like your intention is to spread by taking over. It's kind of a pod people type of scenario or a invasion of the body snatchers. And it's, I think it's interesting because it becomes more difficult to keep up the illusion of being normal the more people you take over, because perhaps you have to kind of like switch between them. And if you're not controlling them, then maybe they just kind of like stand still, unmoving, or maybe they just loop their current task. And that gets suspicious if you do that for too long. Trust me, I know.
I'm going to cruise right past that. Yes. What if, I think, how can you not think about the model of the thing here as Matt Parker outlines? And I know The Sims must have does it have any kind of beckoning mechanic where you can kind of go into another room and call for a friend to join you or something? Because I'm thinking you're going to need to lure people somehow into these vulnerable situations.
To a degree, I'd kind of like more if it was more of kind of a crime of opportunity in a way. I think if you are kind of in somebody's house, a family living together, I feel like two members of the house must find some, opportunity throughout the day where they're not surrounded by the rest of the members of the house, whether people are at work or whether, it's just kind of two people looking for a snack in the kitchen at the same time. And kind of taking those opportunities and really, risking, maybe it's a very visible thing. I was thinking of Carry On, which I played recently, of maybe this horrible kind of alien has to, shoot its like awful tentacles out of the mouth of one person and into another. And, maybe you have to do it unnoticed by them as well. So kind of limiting visibility, kind of giving you a Sims-like experience, but with limits over what you can see, and try to add some kind of a risk to because it is kind of weird in The Sims how you can just kind of click on somebody and then all of a sudden you control them. And then when you click on somebody else, then that person, reassumes, their consciousness.
It's a Mario Odyssey level of,
yeah, exactly.
kind of mental jump. But yeah, I'm trying to I'm trying to think about I do like the idea of maybe you have to mechanically get out of your human skin, or you have to expose yourself as a creature. Why don't we, I even think, just in the same way I pitched a number of weeks ago, The Sims going to more locations, The Sims in a, Ridley Scott type of sci-fi base, where there's all sorts of crazy sci-fi shit to get into, I think is really cool. And so being able to be a monster, and assume people. And then I like the idea of that there's a build up to that, right? Maybe you have to, for each person that becomes one of these monsters, you have to, consume or level up in some way or start eating rats or technology or something. And then consuming someone is such an event because now your play space doubles. You have to be simulating the lives of two people, right? And keeping both of them out of suspicion before you kind of go and take on even a third. So it's almost like you're almost an Age of Empires when you have that moment of like, okay, I'm ready for the next era. And that means a new set of capabilities and challenges that go along with it.
I think this would be really fun to kind of set in like a real naturalistic environment as well, something like a Sims type of neighborhood, because there's a certain kind of horror that, we don't always get to experience that is this kind of creeping terror of like it could happen to you, in your regular town, regular house. I think that there are naturally built checkpoints along the way, as it were. If you infect everybody in a given household, then you can keep the other members of that household inside, and for the most part they aren't going to raise suspicion, because there's nobody who's going to be kind of going in there to check on them. So in that way, it becomes the most difficult when you're kind of venturing out into a new space. But as you take over more and more people within that space, there are fewer and fewer people who are going to turn you in, and it kind of, works towards natural kind of stopping points, or just kind of points at which it feels like a real page is turned in your favor.
I don't know if this is an angle for this as well, but I signed up for a trial of the ridiculous service Shudder. Have you heard of this?
No.
This is the only horror streaming service.
Okay.
So, there was a movie on there that I heard was good, and I was like, all right, I'll try it out. So I signed up for the 7-day trial, of which I'm still in. Over, unfortunately, by the time you're listening to this. But there's a movie called La Llorona, which is a Spanish language horror movie where the central conceit is there's a general who was accused of genocide and war crimes and stuff. And we haven't finished the film yet, but it seems like it's heading in the direction of some sort of horrible event or haunting that is going to carry with him, because he gets off too. The court says, no, he's fine. There's some dictator that gets him off or whatever. And so I do like the idea of what it really made me say is like, this is a wildly original setting, political upheaval in a foreign country, right? Feels like such a different setting for horror. And so, yeah, playing with the setting and having an interesting place to tell this tale. Maybe it is, a Latin country where there's dictators and all this stuff, and you can choose to sort of infiltrate, their entire cabinet of leaders and really tilt the course of a country.
So let's go back to kind of mechanics and think about interesting ways to kind of, are there a lot of the times aliens in movies and stuff like that have ways of kind of special abilities, whether it's, being able to control electronic devices,
having a mouth inside your mouth.
Sure. I mean, yeah, whatever you think would be useful. But what are some other kind of like environmental things that we can do to kind of like either lure people into, this is a real kind of Hitman vibe I'm getting now all of a sudden.
Ooh, a Hitman horror game. I guess Hitman kind of already is a horror game, but
it is kind of. There are some ghosts in Hitman as well, so not unprecedented.
I like the idea of if you can kind of shed your human skin, that you're trying to do it almost like the Hitman in a place where someone isn't going to stumble upon your empty skin and be surprised by you. So you have to be very sort of surgical of like, all right, I'm going to go shed my skin in the bushes outside. But as the alien, if you do the carry-on style thing, maybe you get the ability to travel through vents or maybe even drains or something, and suddenly a new level of navigation in the space is accessible to you.
That's a good idea. Yeah, having more navigation options. Again, I mean, playing Carry On very recently, it was a lot of fun. That one is, you are a horrible, grotesque monster, but there's kind of equal levels of stealth and aggression that your kind of monstrous form allows you. You're very almost kind of liquid-like, where you can fit into openings of all different kind of shapes and sizes, being able to kind of squish through things that people wouldn't, and crawl through the vents near silently while you're kind of like stalking your prey beneath you. At the same time, busting down a door and sending your tentacles to go and take a human and then digesting them in your giant toothed mouth was really exciting as well. I can see similar levels of engagement here.
Yeah, and I do like the idea too of if you can set it in a setting where multiple characters that you are potentially trying to absorb, kill, eat, whatever, are more empowered, right? Like in the same way that the first time you run into a character with like a flamethrower and carry on, you actually have to go, oh, okay, this is this person's serious. Like imagine if you if someone finds you bleeding green blood or something, or acid blood, even better, why not? That can also get you caught. So you're trying to keep these people like all relatively safe as well. And eventually you're going to control so many people that I love the idea of the horror movie trope of kind of everyone in the room is a monster except for one person. And then that person realizing that so they all come out of their skin. But the more people you take over, maybe that's the harder it is to level up, right? Because all of you only get like a piece of the person or something.
Let's close it down. Let's give it a name.
What about this? This is probably already a horror movie, but I just like the sound of the word feast.
Feast. See, it feels like there should be some sort of a word preceding that, like human feast or community feast.
But I could see it like in a distressed, grungy, bloody font to just the word feast put on a poster, and people are like, oh, I get it.
Okay, that seems like a fun kind of like a mid-90s, like inspired by Doom, the wave of games that came around.
If you want to do like a 90s VHS cover, we could do like a birthday cake with like human fingers as the candles too.
That's pretty good. All right, that will do it. That came from Matt Parker. If you would like to submit a pitch of your own, you can do so by going to playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can tweet us at playwrightcast, or you can go to playwrightcast@gmail.com and email us there.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song Hello World off the album Blue Noise. And while you're listening to things, go check out the other great shows on the Playwright Network. That's right, on the Playwright Network. On the
Might as well be at this point. That's what people really come here for.
I know we don't like to acknowledge it, but we are quite popular. Go listen to Canon Rinse. Go listen to Sound of Play. Go listen to Sausage Factory. You're probably already doing all three at this point, but it's worth repeating.
We're going to take you out of the show today with a redacted game, as we do. And I think after last week, I think we need to get back in the swing of perhaps upping the challenge a little bit. So I've got one that, I don't know. We'll see how this goes. I still think you can get this one, and it might not even be a lot of guessing, but we'll see. All right. Redacted Game. The game that incorporates RPG, redacted, adventure, and redacted genres into a chaotic blend of real-world conspiracies, cliffhangers, and plot twists.
Oh.
A richly simulated world of unparalleled interactivity engineered to react redacted to your every action. The decisions and consequences are yours.
The mixing it with reality stuff is interesting. I'm trying to think of games now that have a, quote, real world setting. This is not a real world setting, but it very much is about blending things in immersion. So my first guess is Half-Life Alyx.
No, not Half-Life Alyx, but not a bad guess.
I might need some accolades for this game.
Okay, I'm going to just give you some awards and rankings. I'm going to exclude year for now, and I'm going to include the platform, noting that the way the Metacritic works, they have separate rating pages for each platform. So if it's a multi-platform game, I'm just reading one of them.
Got it.
So it doesn't necessarily mean it's an exclusive for this platform. But, well, let's see. Do you want the years with that? Or might be kind of useless without?
Okay, yeah, then give me the years as well.
Okay. I'll give you rankings and the year. It is the number 7 best PC game of 2000, the number 2 most discussed PC game of 2000, and the number 4 most shared PC game of 2000.
Okay, now we're in PC land. We're in real-ish life. Read me the part where it's blending the genres again.
The game that incorporates RPG, redacted, adventure, and redacted genres into a chaotic blend of real-world conspiracies, cliffhangers, and plot twists.
Real-world conspiracies. Is this... Oh, I was going to say Quantum Break, but that's really an Xbox game, and I don't think that would be PC.
It was also significantly after 2000.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's right. I forgot. Thank you for reminding me. 2000. Okay. So this is right before the Xbox. Real world action. Is this Max Payne?
No, but you are in the right wheelhouse, generally speaking.
Okay. I know that's in New York. I think, wait a minute, maybe that is New York. I thought it was New York. Okay.
I also have, I've got meta scores, user scores, and I can read some 10 review and a 0 review from users as well, whatever you would like.
Let's do the reviews because I think that's the last aspect of drama that we need to complete this.
All right, I'm going to, in real time, redact this one. Just a second, let me give it a quick read through.
This is a real-time redaction, folks. This is scary.
So I have a 0 review and a 10 review. Let's start with the 0 review. This is a user from Metacritic who really did not like this game, who says, horrible, full of bugs, video errors, glitches, and graphic nightmares. This is the most overrated game ever. You watch the intro and it plays X3 the normal speed. You adjust it to play normal and it runs X3 too slow. You either run too fast or too slow that it is impossible to spend or play any time past the first minutes of the game. Redacted's number 1 game that sucks. Avoid this at every cost of your life. Don't even look at it. Don't even look at an ad for it. Nothing. And then a 10 review says, well, what can I say? This has got to be my all-time favorite game. I've played many classics, Doom, Quake, Half-Life. However, what struck me about this game was the storyline. Okay, so Half-Life has a pretty great storyline, and many people agree, but I have to say that Redacted is much better. It's the first time that it's so immersive and compelling. I also love the way in which the player is able to control the outcome of the game. There are so many things to do, like playing pool or swimming around the Redacted. If I was to talk about all the amazing things in the game, I'd be here forever. Basically, to sum it up, it's got a great storyline, brilliant characters, and an array of gameplay methods. I have gave it a 10, but I'd go beyond that. Redacted is just a great game, pure and simple.
Gosh, that's glowing. I don't think this is real world in any way, but you saying Max Payne is a little bit in the wheelhouse. I might be thinking of generic-y sort of white dude protagonist, and I'm gonna say, what if we get into Deus Ex?
That is the one. That's
no
it.
Kidding.
You got it.
It's got RPG. It's got when that player said gameplay styles or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know you could swim in a pool. I never played Deus Ex.
Well, you can swim around the Statue of Liberty on Liberty Island.
Oh yeah, I haven't played the original. I've only played sequels to Deus Ex. Isn't that funny?
It's worth looking into. The full Metacritic description reads, the game that incorporates RPG, action, adventure, and first-person shooter genres into a chaotic blend of real-world conspiracies, cliffhangers, and plot twists. A richly simulated world of unparalleled interactivity engineered to react logically to your every action. The decisions and consequences are yours.
Yeah, the decisions and consequences. That's really good. That's really good.
It has a 90 Metascore and a 9.2 user score, and it is a Metacritic must play.
Wow. I guess I gotta try it. I mean, like, it's no wonder, right? When you go and watch, for example, we talked about horror movies this episode, Paranormal Activity 7 or Saw 13 or all the Nightmare on Elm Street 22. You watch these and they're so laughably bad, but when you really go back to that first film in many of those cases, there's something really special to be seen there. So no surprise. I've found like the sequels to Deus Ex like kinda cool, but it seems like this is the source material that I really need to check out.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to go back to these days. It's pretty involved and a little clunky. But,
Emulator City and that sort of thing.
I mean, it can play on modern PCs just fine, and you'd probably have a real easy time booting it up, and it's probably not too expensive either. But at least that first level, it's one of those games where they call it an interactive sim. It's or immersive sim rather. It's there's crazy ways that people have found to kind of circumvent a lot of the challenges in the game, like attaching mines to a wall and then using those as steps to get to somewhere you're not supposed to be. And the game really allows you to do quite a few things to try to get through its otherwise action-oriented levels.
That's really cool. Yeah, I remember so distinctly that, purpley blue box art of him looking up into the sky. It's just so, especially for PC games, that was all over. That was back in the day when you could go into a CompUSA and see it on the shelf.
Well, that's the show for us today. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Bye.